Hello, my name is Rebecca and welcome to my video. It's that time of year again. The weather is getting slightly warmer. There's definitely a lot of rain this year. So I wanted to make a spring TBR, to be read video for you guys of all the books I want to read this spring. For myself, I want a mix of interesting, kind of analytical, historical, more maybe challenging books for myself, and also some nice, light, fluffy, cozy romantic reads. So this list is going to be definitely a mix of all of those things. So the first two books that I want to read for spring are going to be books that were actually really recommended to me personally by friends or family, and I definitely feel like these are books that I'm going to really enjoy. The first book I want to read was recommended to me by my best friend, and I swear this book was like written for me. This book, just the way that it sounds, I'm like, wow. This is Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson, and it's not as spooky scary as it might sound. It is definitely more of a romantic read, and that will be perfect for the spring. But our main character, Phoebe, she is a PhD candidate, and if you guys don't know, I actually finished my PhD like less than a year ago, and she has recently lost her dad and is grieving and mourning and going back to his place, I believe, to get her things and kind of figure out her life over the summer in Florida. And the neighbor, she sees cute guy, but she believes that he is a serial killer because she listens to so many true crime podcasts and just consumes a lot of that kind of stuff. And turns out he's not. And a romantic kind of relationship ensues, but she definitely has that paranoid side of her. So I think this character is going to be like super relatable. It's going to be like a fun read. I think it's a great way to start out my spring reading. This next book was recommended by my dad, and this is Ancillary Justice by I think it's Leckie. And this is a sci-fi like a sci-fi space opera, first part of a trilogy. And this book is based thousands of years in the future, where there is like an empire who's taking over basically everything, and they have these spaceships and these soldiers that are run by AI. And part of the reason why I was like so interested in this was because I am getting more into AI in literature and what that kind of looks like, and especially because AI is so big right now, like in everywhere. So part of that is like the main character for this book used to be an AI, or still an AI, used to really be like a spaceship, but kind of has become a human and is on this like revenge journey and goes through space and has all of these like adventures, but it's still kind of AI, so it's still kind of learning what is going on. Another interesting part of this book is that there are no like pronouns besides she, which I find really interesting and kind of cool. So it'll be interesting how that kind of works for this character and within this book. There's other genders, but for this AI and the culture that she is in, she only knows the pronoun she. So that will be kind of maybe an interesting and fun part of this book. But I'm excited to read this and kind of get more into like sci-fi and that kind of thing. This next book I want to read because I am a part of a book club, and they are reading this book for the book club, so I need to read this book in like the next week or so. But I am pretty excited about this, and this is called, I hope YouTube doesn't like censor me, but it's called Night Itch. That's what it's called. Like, this is what it is. And I feel kind of like I'm gonna like look kind of cool like reading this like out in a coffee shop, because I don't live in Kansas anymore. If I read this in Kansas, I think I would get like kicked out. But it's by Yoder. More fantasy it's not quite a fantasy novel at all, but there are definitely fantasy elements within this kind of modern novel. And this novel is about the main character is a mother, a new mother, who has really tried to do it all. She has like a little baby, I believe the baby is around like 1 year old or so, has a husband who has a very busy job. One day she's like, finds like a patch of fur on her neck, notices that she's like more irritable at night, is having sharper teeth, and finds out that she's sort of like turning into a dog or maybe some sort of like werewolf, right? And she also meets this group of other moms at this library who may or may not be part of some weird crazy scheme, or maybe it's just like a MLM situation. She doesn't quite know yet. But this seems like pretty interesting to me. It's definitely the type of thing I like. I'm hoping this will have like a little bit of like thriller elements as well, and probably be a commentary on motherhood in the US. The next book I want to read in the spring, because I'm going to have a little bit more cognitive space for it, and I've tried to start it before during like more stressful times of the year this year, and it just didn't work out. And that book is Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel. And this is kind of one of those that's more popular now, a retelling of what you could call mythology. Some people could call their history or a religious text, depending on the culture that you are coming from. But it's basically a retelling of when the woman had been kind of the villain of a story and is now putting it in her perspective. And I am pretty excited about this. Part of the reason why I think it's going to take me a little bit long is longer. One, it's like 500, almost 500 pages. I also have, this is also a beautiful freaking book. I think I've mentioned this book before, but this is a comic book kind of version of, and obviously shorter version of the story that this book is from, which is the Ramayana. So I want to be like going through this comic kind of at the same time, and also like Wikipedia and some other things. So it's gonna be like, just so I have the best perspective on it. So I think this one's gonna take me a little bit longer, but I'm very, very excited to go through this journey with her. So this book I tried to read last fall and I just couldn't do it. And this one I also tried to read last fall because I got married last fall and I just was way too busy. I was like, oh, I'll read a book about a wedding, around my wedding. Did not read at all, especially a physical book. But during the spring, and another kind of like fun, light read I really want to read is For Aunties and a Wedding, and this just like seems like a fun read. I think I'll enjoy it more than my wedding is over. I think it was also kind of stressful to read about a wedding while you were planning a wedding. This follows obviously a bride Medi, and she has these aunties she just loves. Typically these aunties would cater their wedding and she wants them to relax, so she hires another Chinese Indonesian family to cater the wedding for her, but she finds out somehow they're part of the mafia and they're using her wedding to try to like murder somebody, and she is now trying to prevent this murder. So I think this is like a nice mix of like murder and lightheartedness, or like possible murder, true crime, and lightheartedness that I'm hoping that I will enjoy this spring. And the last book I want to read this spring, I'll obviously read more than this, but what I'm really thinking about reading this spring is What My Bones Know, and this is a non-fiction book about complex trauma, and I've heard really good things about it from people I know who worked with trauma. I also work with trauma because there's a lot of problematic some of the older books on trauma and books on trauma in the body are a little bit problematic now, and I'll let you guys kind of look that stuff up if you would like to. But I'm really looking for a book that talks about trauma, talks about how trauma affects the body, that I could possibly like recommend to other people, but I always read a book before I ever recommend it. So yeah, I really I don't know too much about it. Definitely have trigger warnings to this book. It's one of my more complicated books and less of a cozy light read for me, but I am really excited to read this book. But that's all the books so far. Let me know any other books I should read this spring. I don't have a super long list right now, but I'm also open to just like going into bookstores and like grabbing whatever I see that looks good. So let me know what you would recommend and maybe what you're reading this spring. And I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.